Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hello, hello. We're here with the origin
Bienvenue.
story.
Oof.
Hmm. So we've both been having really delightful, full feeling mornings, weekends, couple weeks.
Lives. Month. The month.
The whole month.
Mm,
It is,
yeah.
yeah, it's been incredibly intense. We're just recording this at the end of in the last week of February. And it's like Mars going direct. There's all these things going on astrologically. And uh, there's been a lot of fear needing to move through. There's been a lot of grief. There's been a lot of agitation. There's been a lot of physical purging. There's been just a lot of everything,
Just
everything,
imagine,
everywhere, all at once.
just imagine everything and then just imagine double that. That's what's been going on. It's been just a double dose of everything happening. Just as you said, everything, everywhere, all at once. My
Yeah.
goddess.
Oh my goodness. Ah, taking a nice deep breath in that. So when we were in the end of our last podcast episode recording, we started speaking to the victim consciousness and how we're receiving energy in the world, how we're interacting with vibrational awareness, what we're picking up on, and all of this. And it feels ripe to speak to right now, even though this is going to be coming out later. What we're in right now in this moment in time is the pulse of the 55th gene key, which is, if you're familiar with the gene keys, is the overarching mutation in genetic mutation, DNA mutation that is happening to transform us from Homo sapien to Homo sanctus to the sacred human. And it is the transformation of victim consciousness. And this is kind of what we were speaking to in the last episode. It was like, this is what's changing on the planet, is that we need to evolve and shift through the victim consciousness. So the 55th gene key kind of epitomizes this, and it's about victimization to freedom. And we can see this a lot on the planet right now. The victim consciousness is a very shadow frequency. And whilst the 55th gene key speaks to this specifically, and it's the biggest change that we're going through, it is also the shadow frequency that underpins all the gene keys, and essentially all, I would say, all personal development, personal growth, spiritual growth, all of this. It's like, am I sitting in victim consciousness, which is the shadow frequency, which means that we view everything through that lens of like, this is happening to me, everything is happening to me, I have no power, I can't change anything, what is going on? I have certainly felt a little victimy in the last week or so. I'm usually like the eternal optimist, and I'm always going to look for the silver lining, but in the last week it's been rough. It's been fucking rough. And so it's gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm feeling a little fucking victory right now. And I'm a little bit like, what do I do here? How do I change this? So actually, I'm really glad we're talking about this because, like, personally, selfishly, I'm really happy we get to open up this energy and have this conversation for my benefit. Never mind for anybody else's.
Well, I have to say, like, I mean, look, I'm so glad that other people will listen, but at the end of the day, if this is literally just for you and I just, like, great. Like, that's just how that's how it's just kind of felt for me with the podcast go. Even if it's literally just you and I doing the podcast and we're the only ones listening to our own podcast, phenomenal. Because it's part of energy moving forward, however it's meant to, you know? And I had a conversation with a really amazing brother this weekend where he was like, what's the one thing in your life that has to be created that cannot not be created at this point? Because even if that's not the main creation that wants to emerge from you, it might be blocking the other thing coming through. And so you just have to do it. And I'm like, oh, crap. You're right. I have to do something about it. I can't just sit here and be like, woe's me. Nothing's happening. I'm just sitting here and feeling sorry for myself that I can't be, I don't know, quote unquote, successful in the 3D world. And I don't want to claim that anymore. I'm fucking bored. And there's no worse sin for me these days than feeling bored. And let me be clear on the discerning energy of boredom, because there's boredom that is generative and then there's boredom that's stagnant. And I'm not talking about the creative boredom that comes from giving yourself spaciousness and time for creativity to actually come through. I'm talking about stagnant boredom where it's literally like, I'm in a fucking loop and I got to get out of it and I'm bored. I'm bored as hell with being like, I'm just so spiritual that, the 3D world doesn't recognize me and they don't understand me. That's why they're afraid. That's it. And I'm realizing that I've been in that space for so long, and I need to call myself forward on the bullshit of that level of victim story because it is a victim story. So people just don't understand me, and that's why. And I'm just like not really wallowing. It's not like I'm doing nothing, but there's like, it's been hard, right? It's like, why is somebody else receiving when I know, and I'm going to say something that might sound very unkind. I'm a badass and you're a badass, Jess. And the people in my field are fucking alchemists and badass, badasses. And everybody is in a very similar space in my field who is just like doing the quote unquote work, but not being received by the external 3D population for the work that they do, for the magic that they bring. And it's kind of just like, what is going on here? What is happening? And there's plenty of people who are being received, but I've actually like I've been in containers with these people, or I've met them in person because a lot of them come to Bali, and I'm like, they're not the move. What's happening here? What's happening where these people are receiving and I'm not, And like for me, that's part of the victimization that I've been experiencing, right? So just speaking to that, because it's like, what needs to shift? What energy needs to move? And it's like, for me, it comes into claiming my badassery, not making anybody wrong for receiving on their end. There's a space for everybody at the table. There's 8 billion people on this planet. Everybody needs help. And it's like, how does this get to move forward? How can I still be of the greatest service and move out of fear and victimization and into freedom and inspire freedom in others by choosing that for myself too. So it's that energy is so ripe in the field, not just with whatever you're experiencing of your version of this, same thing with mine, but it's like so many people collectively around the world who are in similar positions. So but I think it's because that there's a shift. There's like a tectonic plate shifting right now, where it's almost like we're in such turbulence of it used to be this way, we're moving into it being this way, and that bridge hasn't, it's not that it's not fully formed yet, but maybe that is it. Maybe it's not fully formed yet, or people aren't knowing that it's safe to cross. It looks rickety, but it's really not. Um, Actually, there's a really brilliant Pixar film. Oh my God. Pixar is just the best, right? But it's a brilliant Pixar film that came out in 2020, and it's called Onward. And it's about two brothers who like go on a quest to basically bring their father back, who's passed into the fairy realms, bring him back for like a day. But they have to access magic. They have to realize that magic is real. And there's a moment where one of the characters has to cross from one side of a canyon to another, and there's no bridge, or like the bridge has fallen. and he has to access magic to do it. And he has to imagine that he's being cared for as he steps out onto this invisible bridge. And so, actually, that's what it is. Right now, with this tectonic plate shifting of one way of being to the next, of society at large, there's a gap and there's no bridge, quote unquote, but actually it's an invisible bridge that people have to cross and people are too scared to cross it. So that's why there's not a lot of movement. So some of us who like can access the magic, we have to remember the invisible bridge. We have to become the invisible bridge and we have to show people that it is actually possible and safe to cross. And I think that bridge archetype is actually very important, not like as a human being for those of us who can straddle worlds to help people remember, yeah, you can get from victimization to freedom. Yes, you can get from one way of being to the next. All of it is very possible, but we're going into the depths of it first to it, activate the remembrance of it.
Yeah. I keep saying, I keep saying, like, I don't know if there is a bridge yet. I'm feeling like we're the ones that have to like swim across the fucking raging river. We're like, ugh. And then we've got to go build the bridge. Like it's it's the team that are going first. It's not like someone made a nice bridge for us ahead of time. We're like, where are we going exactly? We don't really even know what's on the other side, but then we're like, okay, well, we've got to be the ones who build the bridge into the new way of being for others. But it's a really confusing kind of a journey. And so it was really feeling very alive in that was, I know I'm not in this. This is something like not fully, sometimes I'm aware of it, sometimes I'm not. It's this feeling of like, is the world creating me or am I the creator of my reality, right? How am I going to shift from victim consciousness into being the intentional creator of my reality? And I think that idea, the creator of my reality, gets sort of thrown around a lot of the time where it becomes this ridiculous sounding thing sometimes. And it's just like, but do we really understand what that means? I know for a fact I do not really understand how to do that. I don't really understand how that works. So it is this kind of sticky, weird in between place right now where it's like, okay, well, I know I'm not a victim of my reality. I have victimy moments where I'm like, I don't know what to do. But that's because I'm like, I can't go back to the old, but like the new isn't particularly apparent. It's not coming in all at once. My body is having to change. My emotions are having to change. My mind is having to change. My beliefs are having to change. My fears are having to be faced. Like there's all these pieces in the meantime. So being able to, it's like victim consciousness isn't going to just magically dissolve overnight. Like we're very, very well programmed, right? To be a victim to our health, to be victim to money, to be victim to institutions. Like it's this powerlessness that has run through pretty much everything in this life and in this experience. And traditionally, when we've thought of like being empowered or creating or making things happen in the world, it is that kind of energy where it's like, I'm going to push for something to happen, or I'm going to push through the thing to happen, or I'm going to go make it happen. But it requires a lot of hustle and hard work because we're going against the flow of the energy or of the river. And now there has to be a different way of doing that. There has to be a different space that comes from. So it's like, am I letting everything around me influence how I'm showing up? or am I going to influence everything around me? And I can feel that shift point is coming closer. Like I feel like I'm going to gain some understanding, um, reconfiguration, embodiment of this, a new flavor of it, a little bit more sometime soon, hopefully. It feels like it's getting closer. It's like, okay. Cause I know I've been a little bit in the, I'm kind of waiting for things to come in and come together. And it's such a fine line because it's like sometimes we really do get flattened by the energies, by the things. Like this last week is just such an example. It was like every other day was just like, okay, guess this is what we're doing today. Horizontal, bemoaning all the things. And then the next day would be like, this is amazing. And then the next day it was not that. So there's a little bit of this waiting mode and like, I've got to wait for the energies to be right. And there's a sweet spot and a balance, I think, that I hope all of us are trying to navigate and learn how to navigate, where it's like there are energies and forces that will support movement and will support movement forwards, and we can follow those things. But is there a way where I can hold more of the current of my energetic flow? And I think instead of like needing to only go with the river, it's like I can go with the river and I can lie and look up at the sky and let myself float down it. Or like I could swim in the direction that it's going. And I think that's a shift that I'd like to be able to find, because it's like this victim consciousness thing. It doesn't matter if it's like the deepest, lowest version of the victim consciousness and the most shadowy, where it's like I'm not even owning that that's a thing, like where it's really unconscious and it's really like I have zero power over the world. Like we're seeing a lot of this right now. If you look at people are like wildly upset all across the planet, really, with governments and institutions and how everything has been. And it's like there's no sense that like maybe those are not the powers that are going to be helping you in any way, shape, or form. And then there's a sort of higher state of the shadow, I think, in the victim consciousness, which is like right before we break through it, right? It's like we know that we have the capacity and the power to shift things. We know that that is available, but it's not really clear how we're going to do that or where that comes alive in the body, where that gets to be really transformed. And that's like the thing is like a lot of us in the spiritual community get into that higher realm of the victim consciousness at a certain point, because we'll like take responsibility for our stuff. We'll stop blaming the world for everything we're going through. We move through those things. We understand, we take responsibility. We're like, what I'm holding within me, I'm seeing without. I can transmute, I can transform the situation, the triggers that we're used to working with that. But when it comes to like our entire physical reality, that's the piece where it's like, oh, we get there and it's like, okay, well, I'm floating down the river, I'm looking at all the nice scenery, but like, how do I start to actually become the river? How do I actually start to direct that flow? Almost, not that we need to have control over life. This is another beautiful one. Victim consciousness breeds the shadow of control. But it's like, how do I actually start to be a conscious creator of my experience and reality? Not just I can transform what is coming in as input, not just like, oh, this is an experience I don't like because it's a trigger, let me transform that. That's beautiful. And there's something else, I think, beyond that, where we're going. I don't want to keep transmuting my existing reality. What I want to do is actually be the thing that brings what I want to see to life. I believe this is possible. I don't know how to do it. I see glimmers of when it happens. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then there are times where I'm just like, but could I do that intentionally? Could I do that consciously? I don't know. It always seems to happen accidentally. So there's that real thing of like, right, how do I get out of that shadowy victim into like the higher victim consciousness?
Well, well, I mean, I think there were a lot of beautiful things that you spoke to there, and there one thing, and I'm just I like to try to comprehend the why if I can, and without trying to grasp onto it these days. And it's like, why is this happening? And it's like, oh wow, I could take it back to like ancient origin point, where like you get into the concept of fate versus destiny. I think we've touched on this before. Fate is where we have no control over our situations, and it's up to fate to impose itself onto us. And we're really, it's more victimy. It's like in Greek mythology, there were the three fates, right? And then you get into destiny, which is like much more empowered of like stepping into the higher self on like the road of destiny, right? And you can claim that, or you can become beholden to fate and allow it to happen to you. There's this other piece too in mythologies where people are, and this is across cultures that happens regardless of the story. You can find multiple different versions of similar stories across, but I'm just going to stick with the Greeks because that's what came through when you were speaking, where the Greek gods and goddesses, the Greek pantheon, they are very jealous gods and they will punish humans for outshining them, right? For thinking that they are godlike in any kind of way. And you can see that in like, I mean, even in Egyptian mythology, again, in the Old Testament, you can see that it's like, I'm a jealous God. So there's a fear that I feel like we've been ingrained with for so long, like, do not cross the gods. You are not God, and the gods will smite you if you even try to pretend that you are, right? And then we have figures in history who become godlike, who are in their purpose, who are in their passion and are in the flow of life when they have the movement, they have the momentum. Yeshua, Martin Luther King, like gone. You can see people who have been punished, really truly punished, killed for stepping into that kind of God essence. And so we are taught to believe that if we claim that, we will die. We will actually die,
Mm.
right? And so I think that what we're speaking to is a very, 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 very ancient and deep fear of crossing the gods and of actually dying, you know? And I think, and I've had friends, especially men, it's really interesting, especially male friends who they are like, I'm here to be a stand for truth. And they're like, I'm not afraid to die for it. And I think I might. Like I've had multiple men like speak to that. They go, I think I might be killed if I try to say what I need to say or call forward whatever truth needs to be called forward. And I'm like, don't go there. You know, like don't go there. It's not necessary. But that's a real fear. That's a real thing they think about. And it's like, wow, that's really fascinating. And then you can see how cancel culture is kind of part of that. It's not maybe like a physical death, but there is a like you will be ostracized from the community if you do certain things. So it's really interesting. This victim consciousness of what you're speaking to, it feels very, very ancient, very ancient. And so that's why, oh, my whole body is in tingles as I said that. For those of us who are stepping out of fate mentality and into destiny mentality, it's confronting as fuck. Like for me, when I speak to the things that I'm dealing with on my own personal journey of this, I know. I mean, if I really give myself like 5 seconds to stop wallowing in the thing, whatever the story is, I know exactly what I'm doing, which is to say, the thing, and this has been going on for multiple years, it's like the thing that I know I'm here to do, how I'm actually here to be of service, I keep doing everything else around it because it's so intense to claim my boldness, my power, my God essence, my the gift that I have as this fragment of God to be of service in the world as, it's so intense that I would rather do everything else. I'd rather do everything else because I'm like, it can't be that thing. And everything always, it's like all signs are pointing to the thing. Like I had such a wild experience of that this weekend. It was the February 22nd portal, like 222 portal. And I had so many signs. I mean, I'm just like sitting there praying to God. I'm like, God, please send me a sign of what it is that I needs to be so clear, but I'm here to do. And I literally got like all the signier signs, not just one, like all of them. That was like, look here, this is it. And I go, are you sure? And it's just like, hmm. And I think though that that's it. Like, it's just, I'm like tickled by my own ridiculousness because it's like, are you gonna do the thing? And I have moments where I go, oh, I guess I'm gonna do the thing now. And then I get kind of scared. I get scared of doing the thing. And this is the other piece I feel I've felt in my own experience when I've worked with clients, what I've noticed about humanity in general. And this is again, this is part of this tectonic plate shifting of one way of being to the next. It's much easier and feels safer to humans to claim the fear and the victimization piece and our disempowerment and the shadows than it does, even though that's hard. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't feel good to be there. But what's more confronting is light, is God, is it ecstasy, is bliss, is it true empowerment, and is Christ-hearted consciousness. It's it's love, it's authenticity, it's grace. That is more confronting than anything to receive, let alone to become that.
Mm.
So it's like, so when you're asking this question of like, how do I stop allowing, the way I heard it was like, how do I stop allowing the fate of like the flow affect me? And how do I become the thing? It's a very simple answer. You just start becoming it. You just start doing it. You start being it. And as you were saying that, I go, oh, and I'm like realizing, I'm not saying that like I have the answers, Jess. I'm like, oh, that's the answer. Fuck. It's so easy. It's so stupidly easy, but it's the hardest thing to do. And I think that,
Mm.
regardless of whatever major religion or philosophy that you ascribe to, the major teachings are always the simplest. And they're the hardest to actually embody because it's so antithetical to what we've been taught. The human brain desires to make things complex, and actually that's one of my own gene keys in my own personal design is it moves from complexity to simplicity to harmony. And it's like this is where we're moving. We're moving into a state of harmonization. We're moving into a state of equilibrium. We're moving into a state of hieros gamos, of sacred union. We spoke to this on the last podcast of the luminaries of the sun and the moon, right? And embodying those in ourselves, coming into alignment. And I like to play with that word alignment, the lion, like the animal, the alignment, because the lion is affiliated symbolically with the heart, with moving from a space of courage and leadership, right? So if we come into our alignment, right, everybody on the planet is being asked to come into that right now. It's confronting. There's no manual. Like
Mm.
in general, we've been taught that like if you do A, B, C, and D, this is how you will move through life and it will be this way. And like, obviously God likes to throw curveballs because God's just like, oh, let's just throw a curveball. The fates like to do that, and then we have to see how we show up with the curveballs. But in general, most people, including myself, like we've looked for the manual. How do I survive living as a human being on the planet? I just want to like get by and survive and have a quote unquote nice life. And what do I need to do that, And like for instance, the American dream, right? I did the American dream, right? I did everything I was supposed to do to check off every single box. Get married, good. Like have a mortgage, have a good paying job, like just all the check marks, and then just living there, sitting there at like 28 years old and being like, I'm bored. This is my life. Is this the best it's gonna get? And I was just like, wow, this is it. And I just was like, okay. And like one of the phrases that came through at that time for me was, if you can see the path ahead, it's not your path. And that was life altering for me to realize that, because I could see my future at that moment at 28. I saw exactly how my life was going to be, and I was horrified of it. I was like, I can't do that. I'm gonna go insane. I'm gonna actually like be put in a mental institution because I'm so bored. It's so disheartening to me to be doing this. It doesn't make anybody bad in my reality. Like at the time I was in deep victimization about all of the things, but I can see it now for what it is. Now, now though, I'm on such a path where, like you spoke to this as well, it's like it's unclear where we're going, and I'm in the the murkiest waters. I'm like, the images, I work a lot in imagery, and the images that have come through for me over my journey from the past several years are, I stepped into the forest of like transformation. I went through the dark, scary woods for several years. I then learned how to become very masterful in the woods, like very witchy, and knowing, all the berries to eat and all the animal sounds, and like hugging the trees and talking to, like I mastered that. I went through the shadowy darkness of forest of transformation. Came out onto the other side, found a clearing, found a meadow, which like led out to a cliff. Walked out to the edge of the cliff, sat there, stood there a while, was just like, huh, well, now what? It's very foggy. I don't know what's going on. And then the fog's cleared. And then I had to start walking across an invisible bridge. And then I've been doing that for a while. Been doing that for a while, like trusting I'll be like held as I walk across the invisible bridge. Lately, and I think I've spoken to this metaphor as well. So forgive me if I've said it again, but apparently it bears repeating. I've recently seen that there's like something in the distance that I'm actually walking to. I don't know what that is yet, right? I don't know what that strip of land is. I don't know what that grounding is yet. But finally, I can see it, and I'm getting closer and closer every day. But once I get there, I have no manual. I have no idea what happens, what I'm heading into. And I speak to another brother in my life about this regularly. It's like, how much tension can I energetically hold on to in the unknown void of life? Because in that, I will be able to become masterful with whatever it is that I'm given. And right now, that is where it feels like I'm at. I'm holding more and more tension of like the unknown in my system to be okay, for whatever, unmanualed destiny I'm stepping into. And I feel like so many of us, that's what we're doing, right? We're in a void of being able to, can you hold this much tension? Can you hold this much tension? How about this much? Because this is the level of energy and spaciousness that we then take up and provide for people and ourselves and our lineage as we move forward. And it takes tremendous courage to do that, you know. And I think that that's what some of this waiting energy is also. We have to move out of the waiting. Me as well. I
Yeah.
am very excellent at waiting, and I'm very tired at that. Again, very, very bored with the waiting, but it is a fine line, as you said, of like, this is the mastery. How do I know when to move with the energies? How do I not? And to be honest, like with some of the fate stuff, I'm very tuned in, not as tuned in as other people, but I'm very tuned into the astrologies. But actually, lately, I have not wanted to hear a whole lot because I'm like, I don't want that to be informing and place into my belief system that because,
Mm.
oh, Venus is going retrograde soon. Crap, that's going to be really hard. And I'm like, I think it's going to be great. I don't know why. There's no reason for it, but I don't want to have that inform my fate any longer. Don't choose it. I don't want it, And so I'm actually like starting to just renegotiate how I'm moving through the world with some of the astrological I'm going to call them astrological excuses, you know.
Yeah.
They're helpful until they're not helpful anymore. And right now I'm just like, I'm not sure that this is helpful.
It's true.
It
I mean, this
explains
is
things.
yeah, it does explain. It's been helpful, I think, for a long time because
Yeah.
of the fact that it's like, I mean, there have been plenty of moments where a lot of us have felt like I should be checked into a mental asylum. Like someone should take away my responsibilities in my life because we feel insane, like feeling actually potentially insane. Like, am I delusional? Am I living on a different planet? Like, what is going on? So to be able to have that kind of confirmation is beautiful in the journey and all of this, but I've also been feeling the same as this. And less so with the astrology. Like I barely even know what month it is anymore, day of the, let alone day of the week and all the things. So less so with the astrology, but even with the, like energy updates and what's going on here and what's going on here, like especially I find myself less and less and less interested. Sometimes it's a little bit reassuring to kind of dip my toe back in there and be like, what is actually going on right now? Can I just reassure myself that like I'm where I'm meant to be through this? But even that is starting to fall away. And it's like the experience is becoming so personal because it needs to be so personal. It needs to hit the right spots to like poke the things, transform the things personally on an individual level. That even all of that is starting to really fall away. And especially in the last few days, was and over the last week, I think really where it's come in so strong, where it's like, what would happen if I just stopped receiving external input on any of this? And this is the journey and has always been the journey, but this is like a whole new level of that. Again, it's just deepening into it, deepening into it. It's our sovereignty, it's our discernment, it's our capacity to validate and trust our own experiences, even if no one else is validating that and agreeing with that for ourselves, and the ability to trust the body and the radar of truth that is in our system already. And by stopping listening and pulling back from listening to all of the external things, don't get me wrong, like in this moment, I'm still kind of doing it. And then I'm like, what am I doing? Wait, put it away. So I'm trying to change that habit at the moment. But just tuning in and being like, what does this energy today feel like in my body? What am I actually feeling? Like, what am I actually experiencing in the energy, to not need to get that information from somebody else, because somebody else might be having a completely different experience to me. And just to validate my own, there's like deeper and deeper levels of energetic awareness and subtle frequencies and all of this kind of stuff and the impact it's having. But learning to navigate life energetically, learning how to navigate life from the deepest part of the being, from the soul, from that attunement. And like that's literally what all traditions have given us, right? You were talking about the, religious and spiritual traditions and everything else. It's this. It's like we have to, and I think that is the key. And I was reminded this over the weekend. The key to shift from victim to creator to the flow is like literally what every spiritual tradition has ever said, which is like look within, be within. And it doesn't matter for how long. This is like everybody has said this in a million different ways, where it's like stop looking outside of yourself, go within. It's inside, from the inside out, not I see what's out there and then try and like create it in. Like inward connection, feeling, being with the soul, being with the self, being with the sacred self, being with the spark of God that is within, that we are made of, being with the soul, being underneath all of our layers and our parts and our personalities and our ego traits and our like shadows and our this and our this and our this, we can still have those. It's like getting underneath all of that and coming. It's so easy to forget this though, right? Physical reality is very exciting to look at for the personality self. It's like coming deeper, deeper back inward, find the stillness, finding the peace, finding the connection, finding that centeredness, finding that light, that God spark within, and remembering to keep coming back to that. Because we like go there and we're like, oh, that's nice. Now I feel great. I'm going to go play out in the world and I'm going to go meddle with my physical reality and try and be in control. But it's like coming back in again, back in again, back in again. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven within. Like, this is the jewel in the heart of the lotus. Like, this is in so many traditions. Everyone has told
Right.
us, go within and let it create out, like the hologram, like the field, the quantum field that we're in. But it is tricky. It's like I'd love to know. I'd love just like an instruction manual from like an angel or just any of the beings that are like free and available to put something together. That'd be really nice. Like a PDF, something.
PDF
Um,
copy,
yeah,
an
like an
Instagram, like
ebook,
top 7 things to do to get there, like
right?
an infographic. I'll take an
Yeah,
infographic, please. PDF sounds too long. I need it to be very short and very sweet. Thank you.
perfect. But like just like a little instruction manual or a little infographic on like when we are within, then what do we do? What do we do when we're there? Is there a thing to do
Well,
when we're
that's
there? Just
but
be?
but this is it, right? Like, I mean, and even like Carl Jung says, self-actualization is God realization, right? So it again just doesn't matter what the tradition. If you can get into the self, you can be able to move forward. But this is a new age. This is truly the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is moving from one way of being to another. We've never experienced this before. Never in our remembered human collective lifetimes have we remembered this level of power, of this level of being, right? Like it's there isn't a manual because it hasn't existed yet in our remembered lifetimes. Now, my mentor, my teacher would have said there is a blueprint for this that we're finally stepping into, and that blueprint is encoded in the actual mythology of Merlin and Arthur and Camelot, because the version we've been taught is actually a twisted version, a traumatized version that stems from, I forget what it is. I think it's like maybe 15th or 16th century like lady who was spurned by her lover and she wanted the bards to tell a different version of it based on her own lived traumatized experience. So we actually know a disempowered version of Merlin and Arthur rather than the true version. But essentially in Camelot, it was a way of moving through the world in such an empowered and balanced way with nature that they were too ahead of their time and there was a fall, that happened, a fall from grace. But like we're stepping into a new age of Camelot, like mythologically speaking, metaphorically speaking. So there is a blueprint that does exist, but it's time for us to come back into the remembrance of it. And so this is why, again, I like to call it like this ancient future because it's we're moving into much more natural rhythms of being that are actually much more ancient in our bodies, even more ancient than the fear, even more ancient than, of like being smote by the gods. It's so ancient. And we have to get to that point to remember and draw it back into the future of this version of reality. But yeah, we don't have the manual. And that's the thing that is very challenging for me personally. I'm kind of like, can someone just tell me what to do so I can do it? And that's just not going to happen. So I think it's getting the fuck over that for me and just being like, just do it. and for me too, it's like there's also that piece of fear of being ostracized or not being accepted or whatever it is. That's part of I think that's part of every human's fear in doing it differently, you know. But I think it's realizing, for me, I'm surrounded by so many beloveds who love me regardless in my divine messiness, that like it's not going to be a problem. And there's 8 billion people on the planet. If those people fall away, there'll be others to come in and fill the void, you know, and to do it anyway, to do it scared, right? That's true fearlessness, right? It's not have fearlessness is not defined as having no fear. It's doing scary things anyways, right? That's true. That's bravery. And we're being asked to be braver than ever, to be as courageous as ever, to be in our hearts as deeply as ever before. And that's scary. It is scary. That's why most people have avoided heart forward living. Christ consciousness. I mean, it's not about Yeshua, it's not about like, a single person. It's Yeshua was part of a Christic tradition, the Buddha, Mother Mary. There's so many of them. And sometimes we hear about them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they come up in the form of mythologies because it's just like, it's so confronting that somebody would actually choose to live in their heart. It's so wild. How can you do that? How can you do that and survive it? And, we're not really meant to survive. I think it's making peace with that too. We're all going to pass into the fairy realms at some point. So this is confronting what we're moving through, what we're being asked to step into, because it's another layer of the fear of death being revealed, you know, and giving ourselves the permission to forgive ourselves for feeling like we can't move forward. That's important. And isn't that too a form of God essence? Because the whole concept of judgment and forgiveness has been outsourced to an external God. But what about remembering that you can forgive yourself? Forgive
Yeah.
yourself for that too. And so for me, and I'm feeling it in my body as I'm speaking to it, one of the answers of making this really challenging, very confronting, purgative, transformational shift, it's softening. And like one of the things I've been asking is, it's like I've had to just put de-armor and de-armor and de-armor over the past several years. Like, and it's like asking God, how much softer can I get before like I'm actually just a kernel of like a little infantile seed again. It's that vulnerable to feel that soft in the world as it is. It's like, wow, how many more layers need to be revealed? And I feel like I'm getting to a point where it's like the layers are thinning, the veils have thinned to a point of delayering, that it's like walking around the world with that level of de-armored experience of self. And it's like, this is who I am. And I love you. And I love you so much. I can show you this level of vulnerability and openness. Not like fearlessly, with fear, but doing it still anyways. That is very wild, and I think that's also for me personally why I haven't desired to really be seen lately. I've taken a step back to like invisibility, put the invisibility cloak back on, because I'm like, do I really want people to see me at this level of
Yeah.
raw honesty? Like, do people deserve that? What's going to happen? But like, I know, and this is a piece of it that's so important. Before we can really truly access that throne room of source self, we must walk through this like metaphorical antechamber of trust and re-innocencing. And it's this place of like, I trust myself that I've got this. I have faith in God that God's got me because I've got me. And it's like this beautiful loop of just like being creator, being, you know, surrendering. It has to
Mm.
be both before we can come into accessing source. So like I have, and I've seen this in so many beloveds recently, it's like, how much faith do you have that you've
Mm.
got this, even when you're bearing your heart and soul to the world? And it's in the softening, it's in the quieting, it's in the revealing, it's in the tenderness. And it's like the world is so calcified and just continues to seem to calcify. Can I do the most courageous thing and be soft, still be soft, you know? The idea of like the image that's coming forward is it's you got like the SWAT team out there with all their armor and like they're ready to go and you've got the little girl holding a flower, you know. That's wow, angel wings just tingling. But like it's that level of innocence and trust and terror. And it's not sacrifice, but it is also sacrifice, right? Getting into this place where this is just, this is me, and this is what I'm offering, and then
Mm.
seeing what happens. It's, yeah, I'm feeling that softening even in my own body as I'm speaking to it. And it's like, that's the answer. It's continue to soften. Oof.
Yeah. Feeling this really beautiful, like the word that just kept dropping in was presence. Being with the presence, in the presence, the divine presence. It's just this feeling of being so deeply here. And it's almost like energetically, as you were speaking to all of this and sharing there, it was like, this the things that I've been experiencing in the past days where I'm like, I want things to move in this way. I want to go do this. I want to get onto the like everything is like that. I want this or that to happen, or I don't want this or that to happen. And it's like, of course, we go there when we're allowing these emotions to move through the body, the fears, whatever else it is. But as we're sitting and dropping into this present, like energetically, I can feel all of that shifting, and it's like pulling it back into, out of the linear into the vertical, or out of the horizontal linear into that vertical time where it's like really everything comes back deeply into the present moment, and to be with stillness, with that peace in a very, very deep, very, very reverent way. I don't know if I'm communicating this in the
No,
clearest, articulating this in the clearest way, but
it,
it's
I'm with you. You're
bringing that
doing a beautiful job.
all back in, reining that all back in, deeply coming back into the heart, into the center. Yeah, I'm just like, oh good, yes, this, I want to sit with this energy because
I
this
know,
is
I'm also
this
feeling
is
it.
where it is,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that's like that, right? Like that's the gesture, right? If we bring it back into the body, it's like, what are you naturally doing? You're moving out, moving away from that, stretching your arms outward away from the heart, and then you're actually wrapping your arms back into the center and then bringing it into the heart. It's always
Mm.
into the heart. Like everything is about alignment. It's about balance. It's about harmony. And where do, it's the connection between cosmos and earth. And where does that meet? It meets in the human, it meets in the self. And where is the center of the self? It's the heart. It's always the heart, right? And
Mm.
this is This is the peace we've been praying for.
Yeah.
Not just the piece of the puzzle, but the piece, Peace. It's that that pun is coming through, right? That play on the words. It's this is the peace. The peace is within. The peace is the heart.
Yeah.
So this is it.
Yeah. There's there's one piece. um,
Yes.
there's what was just coming through there. It was as this sense of this deep divine peace, is like everything was just settling in my body, everything coming back into the presence. But what was also coming through was as that was translating just into my physical experience and cognitively, what was dropping in to share there, that is bringing a really deep sense of inner power, empowerment in the body, is tapping so deeply into the God self. And we've talked about this before. I think a couple episodes back, we were talking about surrendering into divine chaos and all of this. But the conscious choosing, of the experience, and I speak to this in energetic alchemy as well, as like the gateway of acceptance, because it's the key where everything starts to shift. And we don't usually do that as humanity. We go, oh, I don't want this, I do want this, so I run back and forth, or I try to force myself to change the thing that I don't want, but I'm still rejecting it, so I can't actually bring it into congruency or coherence, because I'm rejecting something rather than coming in. We have to go through that gateway of acceptance, and my deepening into this, that is landing now as we're in this, as we're just unpacking this, it's really landing. It's like the divine part of me, the God self, chooses this right now. I choose this. If I am weeping on the floor of my kitchen, if I am choosing, well, not choosing, but also choosing, if it's like confusion about where I'm going, if it's, what are all these things that were like, oh my God, I don't know, what am I doing with my work, or like, how are we gonna make money, or like whatever the thing is. It's like the however deep the lack, the scarcity, the victimhood, the whatever, the desperation, the despair. And I know that this is so hard to do when physical reality reflects something different. There is not a need to override and pretend like things are not happening, right? A lot of what we see in spiritual community is people start talking about like, oh, just think different thoughts, like la 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 la, think better thoughts. It looks very delusional and like bypassing and painting over the physical reality. I've done that before. I've learned over time to come into deeper and deeper layers of acceptance of what it is. But beyond acceptance, there is divine choosing, conscious choosing. It's like, if I say I am, if my bank account has $0 in it, or negative, like let's say we're like super in the negative, can I come into my divinity and choose it? Be like, I fucking choose this. I chose this and I'm choosing it now. This is, woof, it's giving me like a lot of fire energy. I'm like, oh, this is it. It's not just acceptance. Acceptance is beautiful. There's a layer deeper that we get to access, where the God self within goes, I choose this. I chose this. And don't get me wrong, like just telling ourselves this doesn't necessarily work. Some magical energetic alchemy has just happened on this call as we've been moving through this and working through the things. So honestly, our podcast, best self-development course I've ever been on. Love it.
Best. Well,
but that
but
is
it's
what it
true.
feels like to me, is like the
Yes.
conclusion of this shifting from victim to alignment
Freedom.
to then creator to the God self, living as the God self, is, am I willing to, from an empowered state, connecting to the power of God within me that is me, am I willing to say, I choose this? Because if I choose it, then then the power can come to also move it. But if I'm still rejecting parts of my experience, that's not going to change. Or even if I just go, oh, well, I accept it. I've swum around in acceptance for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm done with acceptance. I'm going to go full power. I fucking choose this. I choose it. I chose it.
Well,
that means I can choose something else.
Exactly. And I think that's so brilliant. And this is something that another brother who's like in this this version of reality that we all have been swimming in for so long. This is what he has been saying for months to me. He goes, how do you literally sit and this is also my reality? And I divinely created this exact moment for a reason for myself, co-created it with spirit. How did I get to this moment and create it for myself? Because this is just how powerful I am. And how can I accept it and choose to be okay with it every waking moment? It's just
Not
what you
even just
said,
choose to be okay with it. Like
but to choose
actively be
it.
like, I've chosen this. I choose this.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
actively
No.
choose this. Yeah. I'm done
Yeah.
being okay with the things. I'm like, no, I choose this.
I love that.
But
No,
yeah, it's exactly that. I've
that
divinely
language.
created this moment. And I love that you brought that in, because that was like, yeah, I have divinely created this moment. How do I fully be in it now?
Yeah.
So potent.
Beautiful.
Whoosh.
Mm. I think that's a beautiful note to end on because I feel very at peace and very charged and full, and I'm very grateful.
I feel it all in my solar plexus and so much power pulsing
Yeah,
through my
same.
body right now. And I'm so grateful. I feel transformed.
Yeah. I feel transformed. Yeah, exactly. I'm feeling it in my heart is just feeling so like this pulsating light energy at my heart, and it feels very gentle. And again, it's just like the gentle warrior. That's how it feels right now. It's just like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I feel it. Okay.
Mm.
I'm claiming it now. I claim it now. I claim my destiny now. I claim my reality now. I claim this. Claim it. I claim it. I claim it.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you so
Mm.
much.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Thank you to everybody
Enjoy whatever
listening.
your, yeah, thank you, everyone. Enjoy whatever your choosings are for the rest of your day, wherever you are in the world, as you finish listening to this. Thank you.
So much love. We see you next
Lots of
time.
love. Ciao.